Talk with Justin Thurber. How you doing today, Jim?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
I know it was kind of a quiet week for us, and then on Friday morning at like 8:37 in the morning, I got a very weird email, and we can discuss that in a minute. And I think I sent it to you, and yeah, it's kind of indicative of the whole Republican Party and where it's at. So let's get right into it really quick. Ooh. So this is the email I got, and did you get this email as well?
Let's see. Let's pull it up.
All right, here we go.
Ah, yes, the Mass GOP Unity event.
The Unity event that was held yesterday. So I don't know how good anyone can see uh, this email. Let me see if I can't blow it up for us a little bit more and transition it over. All right. So remember, this was at Friday, 8:37 in the morning. Come join us tomorrow at Off the Rails in Worcester for a Unity event. And then it goes on a little bit more who's going to be there. But what I found very, very strange is what I highlighted to elect Republicans in 2023. Well, and 2024, but 2023. So I don't know about you. I don't know if, like, I sent this to a lot of people, just to email to see if they would catch what I caught, and they kind of didn't. So I had to, like, explain myself. But did you catch that?
Yeah, I mean it's we're in mid March now, and then a lot of these local elections. Each town is different, but a lot of them are like in mid May, and a lot of them you have to really get yourself on the ballot and get signatures like within the next week or two. So it's a little bit a little bit late into the process to get to help candidates out for 2023. But hey,
Well, so that knowing a lot of people in RTCs, a lot of people that are politically involved and engaged. I reached out to a bunch of people, even you, and was like, "Hey, listen, are RTCs being contacted by the Mass GOP? Are they being worked with? Are candidates being worked with? Does the Mass GOP even know like how many people are running in each town for what positions they're running for?" And the answer I found for all that is no. So I know this is a Amy Carnevale event, and again, I'm trying. Part of my channel is to try bringing people together and not throw too many people under the bus, right? But I think this is one area where us as Republicans have to improve. We can't say, "Hey, listen, we're new to this," or "We didn't know." I mean, when Jim Lyons was going against Amy Carnevale, she spoke a big game about fundraising and setting the Republicans off in a new and better direction to win. Right? We should know, especially the Mass GOP head should know. Hey, there's town elections every year, and we need to have a game plan, and we need to win back some of these seats, and not only win some of these seats, but there's a lot of uncontested seats. So you're sitting here with these uncontested seats, and you have someone in on March 19th or March 18th having a unity event to figure out how they're going to win in 2023. Well, that's too late.
yeah, and I think this also speaks to, like you were mentioning before, some of the divide, and just looking at trying to look at it fairly. Like, so Amy got elected as a chair in late January, so really February to put this together. So it's a short time frame, but it just speaks to the divide in the Mass GOP a little bit too, because the Mass GOP should really be operating that, like, all this stuff should be planned. It shouldn't matter who the chair is. Like, all these
Right.
events should be like, these should be annual events. Like, we should have a platform, and we should have these trainings throughout the year. It shouldn't matter who the chairperson is at any given time. It's like we need to, like, whoever it is, we need to get these events going so we can get candidates trained, recruited, trained, and get them on the ballot so that they can be successful when they run for their local positions.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you said that because that's definitely how I'm tracking. Only being in this for less than a year, you're shocked. And you're shocked by, again, I don't want to throw all the Republicans at the state level under the bus, but it's so disorganized. There's like no plan. There's nothing in place. It just seems like every time there's a shift in what you want to call them, rhinos or conservatives, whatever you want to call all these little factions, nothing happens. And we have to get through that. I keep telling people we have to build bottom up, not top down. And that's I think one of the big issues right now is a lot of people at the state level, Mass GOP, look as everything comes down from them, right? Where what has to happen is they have to say, listen, we need to build RTCs that can run independent of us, and RTCs that will put candidates in seats, because we need candidates. I have a town that's part of my district. They just basically started an RTC about 4 months ago. They have 6 or 7 people, and they're going to be putting in for 10 seats that they should win in 4 months. Imagine what we could do is if year round we had these things in place, if we had people in place that no matter who changes at the top, no matter who changes in the middle, that ground level, we have a good ground game and we can keep going forward. So again, like, I don't want to pick on people, right? And sometimes, when you're the head of something, you're going to have to take some of the heat. But come on, you knew this, right? And the other thing that was told to us is if elected was going to be a great fundraiser. So, you and I were looking to see how the fundraising's going, because that affects candidates, in their pocketbooks and how they can actually run elections. And I don't know. Here's the numbers.
Well, just hold on. So yeah, and then just to kind of lead into this. So I think it was funny. We talked about, so leading up to the chair election, like one of the key, like probably the most talked about issue leading into the election was fundraising. You look at any sort of interview that Politico or Boston Globe or anyone was putting it out, was all about fundraising, fundraising, fundraising. You had all these ultra wealthy donors that lined up that said, hey, if we change leadership, if we do something different, we're gonna pour all this money into the Mass GOP. It's gonna be like fundraising like you've never seen. That's kind of the background. That was the like key talking point in the election. So it's like February, the Mass GOP changed leadership, and that was the reason why, due to fundraising and really driving fundraising. And then we look at, let's go ahead, let's dig into how much the fundraising was for February.
Yes. I see a lot of expenditures, not a lot of fundraising. And again, you and I know sometimes there's delays in reporting. Maybe March, it's starting to pick up. Maybe this event, the Unity event, was an effort for her to have a kickoff and start, raising some of this money, right? However, I get the sense from talking to a lot of people in various capacities that they want to stop funding, like the Mass GOP. They want to start funding candidates. And I think that's going to be a problem. I think that's going to be a big problem for the Mass State GOP as a whole, no matter who's in charge, because I think what's happening is you have so many Republicans, so many conservatives, so many independents that want Republicans to be successful, but they're getting disillusioned by nothing happening, ineffective leadership, no ground game, not seeing anyone ever elected. And they're like, what's my money going to? Why am I supporting something that I'm not seeing any results from?
Yeah, I agree completely. It's like if any donor looking at the Mass GOP right now, it's like, well, it's like you see all this the infighting, and you're like, why would I donate to something that's really low performing right now? Like you said, half the races are uncontested, so it's like you're throwing your money into you might as well throw your money into the garbage can. I think a lot of people are interpreting that, and it's like, the Mass GOP too. It's like there's so many competitive races, and it's like there's just so many races in general, and it's like we really need to target the competitive races, and that's where we should really, like, we need to prioritize the money the little money that they do have, so that they can actually start getting results. And then once you start building a track record, then you can start reaching out for more donors. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this before too. It's like, there's so many things that every single candidate needs, that they're all starting off from scratch. Even if you were just to start investing in like a platform to help candidates run. And this is stuff you don't even need a heck of a lot of money to do this, right? So like training classes, like half the people that I talked to that ran in 2022, they're complete outsiders. They had no idea how to run a campaign. They have no idea how to like create a website, like create donation pages, all this stuff. And it's like you need just like the basics. And it's like you could literally have someone. You have at least there's 26 sitting state reps right now. Have one of them put together a video, a little training platform. Hey, this is what I did. This is how I did it. Like just even that, just a basic conversation of like, or just some basic ideas or a basic process of how to win or like how to run a campaign would have been so helpful to all these candidates. But it's like there's nothing out there.
Yeah. So I think going forward, I hope what happens, and this is the God's honest truth. Like I want Republicans to win. I want Democrats to lose. That's one of my main platforms. It'll probably be used against me at some point in time. But it's true. I believe we have better ideas. I believe we are horrible at communicating it. And for some reason, we can't get out of our own way. So how do we become effective? And you and I talked a lot about this when I first started, because when I first started campaigning, there was literally no help. And I said, why are we reinventing the wheel? It shouldn't happen that way. We shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel as candidates. We shouldn't have to sit there and try figuring everything out and get no help. I guess the good thing for me is, as I told Jim Lyons, who was the head of the Mass GOP at that time, is I'm going to do what I want to do, because I looked at it like I'm house money. They weren't counting on me, so they don't have to support me. I'm going to go my own way and figure it out myself. Now, I have the capacity to do that. I have the time to do that. I don't think a lot of other candidates do. So what I would like to see is RTCs being built, and then through those RTCs, you can help run people's campaigns. And once we start building those, and once we have this ground level support, I think the state level stuff will be taken care of and rectified, and then we can worry about that. But I think trickle downs works in some aspects. This is one I don't see working. Like, hey, listen, everything's going to come from the top of the GOP down, and everything's going to get better. Now, granted, sometimes that works, but it's never going to work for long. You need a base. We need a solid base. We need that base built, and then we build from there. Without that base, we're just going to keep falling down. So, but I don't want to get this too much longer. If you want to say a couple more things, and then we can move on to the next big story.
Yeah, my only other last comment would just be, I mean, that goes to that quote: if you do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, that's the definition of insanity. And that's exactly what Massachusetts has done. We've approached it from the top down since I've been alive. It's like we will win the governorship, great, but the governor has no power. There's no state reps. They don't even have a veto power. So
yes,
like. It's like even if a bill is passed, it's like the Democrats have complete supermajority in the legislature, so they can literally just ram through anything they want. That's the exact thing. That's exactly what they've done over the last 30, 40 years, probably even back further. So it's like this whole top down idea of top down. It's just like it doesn't work. It's ineffective.
yes,
and it's like perceived. It's like, oh, we have the perception that, oh, we have a Republican governor. It's like, oh, there's Republicans in Massachusetts, but there's really no point in it because they have no power. They can't do anything.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And like I said, hopefully in the future, you and I can build, and we can build with other people that want to actually build something. So the next big story let's talk about is the SVB bank. I know we talked about a little bit, probably a lot of it last week. I had some people comment that watched our video that they know a lot more about banking than they thought they ever would, which was actually pretty good. But I love this meme, right? Because this meme works for me on a whole bunch of different levels, right? Banks evaluating you for a $2,000 credit limit, right? And they're like inspecting everything. And then banks evaluating their own $100 billion portfolio, and they look as stupid as hell. And I would also say I was looking for another meme about the government, because it's kind of like the IRS too, right? They wanted to find out what you're doing with your $600 Venmo payment, right? But banks are collapsing, right? And I sit there and I'm looking at this, and I was thinking about this too. I'm like, hey, we have credit scores. And I think I mentioned this to you when we talked offline, or maybe it was last week. I think like banks should have ratings on their front of their doors. Like in New York City, when you go to a restaurant, the Board of Health says this is a good place to eat or it's not a good place to eat. Maybe banks should be held to a higher standard because we just can't keep bailing too big to fail banks out.
Yeah, you're right. It's absolutely ridiculous too, because you look at, like, I think Forbes they had literally just published a list the week before. It was like top 20 banks, and Silicon Valley Bank was like number 16. If you looked at their stock, it was like 16 out of 20 analysts had recommended them as like a buy. And it's like, it's like no, and that's what happens when it's like when times are good, it's like everyone's just kind of going through the motions. Everyone's on cruise control. No one's actually like digging down and actually like doing the homework. But yeah, clearly this bank had some big problems, and unfortunately I think it's part of a bigger event that seems to be getting incrementally worse as we go through the year.
Well, Janet Yellen, who said inflation was transitory and seems to be wrong on everything, she was called up to the Senate this week, and there was a 5-minute type of video
still no
clip I want to
definition.
run through with you, and we can discuss it. There was some fascinating things that it blew my mind to hear. I don't think a lot of people know what's going on, and I just want to break it down, and see what your takes are on it. So I think you said you might have listened to this, but listen really close and we can discuss it. Like this first one is probably like a 9 to 13 seconds into it when you hear what this guy says, and it blows my mind.
There's still no definition for the $600 if you do Venmo payments to somebody up to $600. Now the IRS is going to track you. I've noticed that you've delayed that, and the IRS has delayed that. But there's a lot of questions with that. And
so he starts off, and I think this is a setup. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's a setup, right? I think what he's doing is he's sitting there and he's saying to Janet Yellen, hey, the IRS and you have yet to discuss and get the terms of this $600 that you're going to go after everybody for. Oh, and let's talk about this $100 billion that you're going to be giving to these banks. It's nonsensical.
there's still no definition for the $600 if you do Venmo payments to somebody up to $600. Now the IRS is going to track you. I've noticed that you've delayed that, and the IRS has delayed that. But there's a lot of
Yeah, they delayed it because now people are going to say, what the heck?
And that was the whole like gripe between like when they passed the funding bill to allow IRS funding. It was like they're going to hire 87,000 new IRS agents. Like there's only so many billionaires and millionaires in the United States, so it's like I think the billionaires like in the hundreds. So like if you're hiring 87,000 agents, you're not just targeting wealthy individuals. Like you're going after those $600 transactions. And that was an excuse that they gave to increase spending and increase taxes, or like, hey, to increase to close the deficit. They said, oh, we think people are cheating on their taxes by not reporting their $601 transactions. So therefore, we're going to crack down on those to increase tax revenue. So we can
what I'm thinking? I'm sorry for cutting you off. You just said they're cheating. Well, I think that's projection.
Yeah.
I think all those guys are cheating, and like if we're cheating, regular people must be cheating,
Yeah, and it like you were mentioning earlier too about that like Janet Yellen is the one. It's like she's got this the magic wand. She's like the king. It's like when you have the when they do the gladiator stuff, right? It's like he does thumbs up or thumbs down. So she's like she's the queen of deciding which banks live or die. So it's like you might as well, anytime a bank is failing. And she had mentioned this too, I think. And the community banks are not necessarily going to be protected.
Oh, let's get to that. Don't get ahead. But I got to. All right, so we're gonna get there. I think there's a couple other things that I want to touch on too, but we'll get to there. So
and new creative definitions of what it means to be made in America. We now have new treaties that are popping up that are not really treaties, not really free trade agreements, but are being declared free trade agreements to allow from the Inflation Reduction Act actions from Japan and Germany to now be defined as made in America. I find that.
Yeah. So now. Yeah. So now he's talking about that you can have made in America from Germany and Japan. Getting back to another thing that, Mr. Langford or Senator Langford was saying is we're going to allow things that are made in Germany and Japan to be said they're made in America. What kind of what kind of crap is that? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's like it's kind of like the manufacturing thing, right? So if you can pull in parts from all over the world, right? I mean, and that's the thing is, but as long as you do a certain amount of assembly in the United States, you can slap that logo made in the United States.
Yeah. So let's get to the next part of what he says, because like I said, he pulled out some doozies. Like I said, I don't think a lot of people know exactly what the heck is going on. Everyone's just trying to live their life, and these people are screwing you 2 ways to Sunday. But
And that very creative. Love to talk about all that. Don't have time. I need to be able to drill in on a couple of things. Let me start with some of the banking issues we're dealing with on it. Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVB just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is
And
your
we
plan?
made that determination.
Right. So
these
what is
two
your
banks.
plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks?
so again, you kind of hit on that a little bit earlier, where and what Senator Langford is saying is a lot of people are seeing what's going on, that you only bail out big banks. So why would you have your money in a community bank? Even though community banks now are going to bear the brunt and the expense of what big banks are doing. And what did she say? Well, I'll discuss it with the president and I'll help him make that decision, with the FDIC. Like you said, she's the one that's picking and choosing, and that's not how it's supposed to work.
And the thing I love about this too, right, is so she was the prior chair of the Fed, and then there was a period. She's now the Treasury, under Biden's administration. And in between that time, she was going to all these different banks and collecting money from speaker fees.
Yes.
So, the banks have all paid her all this money throughout the year, and now she's going to be the one deciding which banks essentially live and which banks die. So it's like, you think that, however much money some of those banks have paid her in the past and how much some of them will likely pay her in the future, you think that has any sort of weight on her decision? It's like, I don't know. I was born at night, but not last night. So, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous to think that, that might not influence her decision making.
All right, let's hear a little bit more. Like, she's got a, yeah, she got some
Certainly
explaining
not
to do.
something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening
And
because you're
it's-
fully insured no matter what the amount is if you're in a big bank. You're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
You
the big-
were at Signature, and
the
it
big-
just barely met that threshold. You were at Signature.
Well, we felt that there was a serious risk of contagion.
All right, this is where I have to go to, is contagion. So one thing you're going to start seeing is that word be passed around, right? And you're going to have the news media, you're going to have politicians start talking about that word contagion. And I heard it last week, and someone said, watch, that's the word they're going to use to justify, saving these banks and saving Oprah Winfrey's $590 million and saving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's money that are in SVB, right? They're going to sit there and be like, well, it's a contagion. If this bank fails, all these other companies are going to fail. And the other question I wanted to ask you is, the money's still there technically. Most of the money's still there. They just aren't going to make as much profit as they thought they were going to make. And there was a run because some bigger companies said, hey, they're not going to have the money because we can get better interest rates. So why leave it in SVB? And that's where they started pulling money out, and that's when they got caught with their pants down.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I had two thoughts on that. One is like, look at 2008. Look at all the bailouts that the government did for all these banks in 2008. Did they prevent 2008 from happening? Could you view 2008? Could anyone view 2008 as a success?
No.
So it's like we've already been through this. The government's already bailed out banks, and it had like zero impact on the end result. Like 2008 was the nastiest recession that we've had since the Great Recession. So the bank bailouts did not work by any means in that situation. And then the second aspect that you bring is you talk about like the balance sheet of these banks, and it's like the companies that are bailing these banks out are getting treated as heroes. And
Yes.
It's like what's happening is that a lot of these assets, what happened is they bought a lot of bonds, which go down in value when interest rates go up. So the unrealized losses that they have on those assets, are pretty big right now because interest rates are very high. So what the government is doing is they're pretty much subsidizing these banks to buy them at current asset prices. Well, guess what's going to happen? As soon as these banks acquire these assets, interest rates are going to come right back down. Jerome
Yes.
Powell, I mean, it's already all the media, everyone's already talking about how they're going to bring the rates back down to kind of ease this situation. Guess what's going to happen to all those assets that went down in value when interest rates went up? When interest rates go down, those things are going to be so profitable. These banks are going to have record profits from these assets that they're acquiring, and they're using taxpayer dollars to make it make sense for them. So it's just a complete waste of taxpayer money.
Yeah, that's why I think we should get some of these politicians out of this. And we talked about it last week. You're going to see a lot of politicians get in to solve the problems. They're going to make things worse and make people money. So, and the people that are going to suffer are the everyday Americans. So let's finish out this video and see what these people have to say. It blew my mind though.
That could have brought down and triggered runs on many banks, and that's something, given that our judgment is that the banking system overall is safe and sound, depositors should have confidence in the system, and we took these actions.
So there's a
to
special
discourage
assessment that's been done
contagion.
on community banks in my state and all banks across the country. Was there any discussion that special
So that special assessment, really quick for everyone watching, is more like a special assessment is more money those banks are going to be charged to prevent this. So you really have to catch it, because when I first heard it the first couple of times, I thought he's like there was an overview or the government was going to be looking at them closer, but it's not. The special assessment is going to be a fee. So let's listen. I just want people to understand that. Oops, let me hit the play.
Was there any discussion that special assessment would only apply to the larger banks, or was it always assumed the special assessment would cover every bank, including rural banks in my state?
I think, I'm not certain what the rules are around that. That's for the FDIC to determine.
It has been reported publicly that SVB had a large number of Chinese investors that are there, including some that were companies directly connected to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yes, and we're gonna bail out Chinese companies too, just to let you know.
Will those individuals, companies, entities, and investors that are Chinese investors be made whole based on assessments in my banks in Oklahoma? So what I'm asking is, will my banks in Oklahoma pay a special assessment to be able to make Chinese investors whole from Silicon Valley Bank?
Uninsured investors will be made whole in that bank, and I suppose that could include foreign depositors, but I don't believe there's any legal basis to discriminate among uninsured.
I get it, but I'm
depositors.
just saying that my community banks are going to pay this additional fee. It is always fascinating to me as well, the conversation that taxpayers are being made whole in this, that taxpayers are not going to have any kind of consequence on this. I'm sure my bankers are going to be very excited to know they no longer pay taxes.
So the lies, right? The assessment is, I think, used to make people think that, like I said, it's an oversight or an overview of their policy. Well, the assessment is a fee. And, obviously politicians play fast and loose with words to confuse people. So for the people that are confused, this fee is going to be doled out to all banks. Well, obviously other banks want to be successful and make money and have money to be profitable, stay in business. So what is going to happen? They're going to raise rates on their customers, which isn't a tax, but it is a tax. It's going to be passed on to us. So everyone else is going to have to pay for these companies to stay in business. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as if competing as a regional bank against these big banks wasn't hard enough. This is, again, it's just one more regulation, one more fee, one more added thing that they have to do that's going to make them less competitive and make it harder for them to stay in business. And I've talked to a couple people on this, and it's like, listening to the interview, some may think that Janet Yellen doesn't really understand the impact that those policies are having of people migrating from the smaller banks to bigger banks. Other people think it's 100% intentional, because that's kind of the agenda, is to destroy some of the smaller banks. And
Yep.
we'll see how that plays out. But one of the other points that you brought up I want to touch on is, I love how the fact that the FDIC insurance, it was $250,000. Now it's in effect infinity for these bank bailouts. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much money you had. Like, we're bailing out every single person. It doesn't matter if you're a member of the Chinese Communist Party with $50 million in the bank or what. So it's like, we're not talking about mom and pop people that are losing their money at Silicon Valley Bank. These are people like Gavin Newsom, who has like 3 wine companies that are operating out of Silicon Valley Bank, who's the biggest proponent of bailing them out. Like, these are like very high net worth individuals who have played, who are speculating on tech companies. So it's like, the 250,000 is covered, but like, we're spending all this taxpayer money to bail out like the people banking here that are very high net worth individuals. So it's just, I don't know. The whole thing stinks to high heaven in my book.
And from what I heard too, a lot of those investments and a lot of those people investing with SVB were doing it because it was risky and there was a lot of potential profit to be made. So it wasn't like normal banking, like you or I consider it to be normal banking. It was more risky type banking. So let's finish this up.
Capitalized profits, socialized losses. That's essentially what's happening. Do we as taxpayers, do we get to share in when these people put in their money and they they make millions upon dollars when these tech companies IPO and do all these equity offerings? No. So it's like, why are we paying for the losses that these people suffer when we don't benefit from the gains?
Yeah, let's I'm gonna get a T-shirt. We should make some T-shirts. We'll sell them. We'll have our own store, a swag store, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, let's finish this up, and then we can finish the discussion really quick, so we can move on to Mike if he gets back.
And their banks no longer pay taxes. Credit unions don't pay taxes. Banks do, and so they're definitely taxpayers as well. And all banks make their revenue off of rates and fees and such to their account holders, which means every Oklahoman will pay higher fees in their community bank.
We're just going to have to move on.
If we have a collapse of the banking system and its economic consequences, that will have very severe effects on banks in Oklahoma that will also be threatened.
I'm just worried about the long. I'm just worried about the long-term.
We are going to have to move.
There's still no definition for the.
All right, so there's the long and short of it, right? The reason why they can do this is they're going to scare you with contagion, and if this bank goes under, I agree with that. What I don't agree with is letting it get to that point, right? Like, banks should be well regulated.
Yeah, I mean, look at 2008 is a perfect example. We spent all this money bailing out Bear Stearns. We, it's like we spent all these taxpayer money bailing out banks at the beginning of 2008. And what happened? We had more banks collapse. The highest banks in total assets collapsed during 2000. Like, what we're talking about, like, the government doesn't have enough money to bail out every single bank as this, as this thing picks up, which a lot of people think it will. So like just because these are the first to have it happen to, like doesn't mean that we should be bailing them out. It's like like they cannot bail out every single bank every single time a bank fails. So like it just, to me it doesn't make sense. It's you protect the FDIC insurance that you committed to doing, the 250,000, and you let you have to stick to your to the rules that you committed, but you can't commit taxpayer dollars to any more than that.
Yeah, well, again, like I wish we were bailed out. I wish. Oh, there he is. We didn't. I know Mike Vulcano is going to be joining us in a second, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll just end on that. Like I wish it was different, and hopefully going forward, we'll have good candidates like Mike Vulcano, right? When we get him on board to sit there and actually fight for us, and push back against business abuse, because I guess they just feel like, hey, we can do whatever we want because we're too big to fail. So, but well, he's there and then he's not there. Let's see if we can get him on. All right, he was. I think we lose him. So, but yeah, so it's just. Is there an easy answer for this? Is there really an easy answer to solve this problem? Like, I'm not a big regulation person either, but there should be mechanisms or rail guards or safeguards put in place that don't allow banks to get this way.
Yeah, and it's a good example of it too is the crypto industry, because what happened in crypto in like the fall? It's like when crypto collapsed, there was no bank bailouts at all in crypto, and the whole crypto industry pretty much collapsed, but there was no government bailout. So it's already started to rebound.
Yes,
a lot. So it's like when the government doesn't get involved, you can actually have a quicker recovery. But like in 2008, we saw everything collapse, and we saw the government commit all this taxpayer money into everything, and it made the recovery slower. Like, I don't know if people remember, but there was like anemic growth for like 4 years after 2008. It wasn't until like 2013 that the economy actually started picking up. So it's just
Barack Obama.
Yeah. It's like anytime the government gets involved, it just makes the situation worse.
All right. Let's do this. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the Let's Talk with Justin Thurber show, Mike Vulcano. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. This is awesome. Happy St. Patty's Day. I was in Southie today with my family, and it took forever to get back, but I'm here. Thank you for having me.
We thank you for taking the time. If you don't mind, if you got a couple minutes and you just want to give a little backstory about, how you got involved in politics, maybe even how you got involved with Jimmy or myself, whatever, and then we can ask some more questions. That sound good?
Yeah. Just, I think it had to do with President Trump is really how this thing got started. Really watching him do what he did with government took me back as to a kid where, the government actually worked for the people versus the people working for the government. And I just saw us prospering as a country, and then watched this whole thing go down the toilet throughout the COVID. And, you knew that the fix was in when the election happened, and just look what's happened since the election. I don't know who these 80-something million people are that voted for Joe Biden, but at the end of the day, no disrespect about that old guy, but we're all going to be at his ages someday, but he's nowhere near fit to run this country. And he's, him and his family are corrupt.
Yep.
It's obvious. It's so obvious. If any of us had 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 100, if you had $100,000 deposited into your checking account, the IRS would be knocking on your door within a week. And it's just a double standard. We've got a real problem in government. And that's really how I got involved in it. And I started meeting other people, my neighbor introduced me to Jimmy, and I introduced Jimmy to Sander, and then Jimmy introduced me to you. And I started going to some meetings, some training meetings, and found out there's more people like us than we think there are. But
Yes.
we're the voice. They're not willing to speak up. It's funny.
Let's-
I was at my daughter's today for St. Patrick's Day, and people. I know my daughter's mother-in-law is, they're great people,
Yeah.
but I know they're liberal. Okay.
Yes.
But the rest of the people in the house are all leaning in like, what's the deal with the public school system? Kids don't know whether they're a male or a female, and they don't know this, they don't know that. And it just, people are talking to me, and they're going, well, what's it like when you're coaching, and what's it like with this? And I said, there's no issue with coaching because the kids are there.
Yes.
Where they come from poverty or they don't, we don't lie to them. We tell them the way it is. We tell them the truth. We're not going to sit there and go, well, you can make this decision. No, you can't make this decision. God made the decision. It's already been made for you. And it's just, we're down a path to total destruction of this country. And it's not because of people like the three of us. It's not because of that. Today, when you saw those guys marching that parade, when you saw those veterans of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, you had this Vietnam group that came through. The whole parade in Southie is put on by the veterans. It's called the Veterans. I can't remember the name of it, but they spoke at the beginning of the parade, and I got to listen to them speak. And it's just a bunch of older people, older versions of us.
Yes. Yes.
And benevolent society, whatever. And they were, these guys evacuated Southie during the revolution. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And we're sitting here like it's whatever it was. It just blows my mind. And then to look at us today, and people don't know how to treat each other. People don't know how to. It's just, the whole thing is sickening, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And obviously, with open borders and all the other problems we have, it's just going to compound and make society worse. And every single town is hurting from it.
There's a lot of things you said, and a lot of things obviously we agree with, but one of the big things you said, there's a lot of people out there like us, and I think that's one of the biggest things as a person who ran for office that I saw, and I think when we discussed it, you saw it too, is a lot of times a lot of these people feel like they're alone and by themselves, but when they start talking to other people, they realize, man, there's a lot of us out there. So I haven't told you this, Mike.
The guy today that stood next to me, he's from Needham. His classmate was Charlie Baker.
Wow.
His classmate was that stooge from New Jersey. And this guy is conservative. You know what he says to me? He goes, they may be Republicans by the type, what government, he goes, but their views on society couldn't get any more liberal than what they are. Yes. He goes, they're just not conservative. They're not conservative people, and they shouldn't be in the party. They should be part of the party. It's mind-boggling. Jimmy and I talk about it all the time. I don't get to speak to you as much. I can't believe it. I just can't believe the crap that goes on. We just sit here, So we got to have a plan.
Yes. Well, we have a plan. This is part of the plan, and I know you're still involved with us. I have another thing I thought of recently. I was talking to a woman at work, and she didn't know how good my election actually turned out. She was shocked that it was 53-47. I lost by 6 points, right? And I told her, I go, well, that's the thing that they don't want you to understand. And she's like, what is? I go, so what they get in your mindset is this is a blue state. She's like, yeah, that's a blue state. She's like, I voted for you on election day, but it takes everything in me to vote because this is a blue state. And I said, see, this is where you're wrong. 15% of registered people in Massachusetts are registered Republican. 25% are registered Democrats. 60% are unenrolled. I go, the trick they play is they say it's a blue state. So most people sit there and say, I am not going to go out and vote for my conservative values because my person isn't going to win. If people thought we had a chance, they would come out to vote and we'd win. So this state isn't a blue state. 53-47 is a purple state. You're 3 percentage points and one vote away from being in there. You're not 6 points away. You're 3 points and 1 vote. We just have to get that mentality out there. And like I said, they've done a great job with propaganda, making people feel alone, making people feel like there's not as much as many of us in this state. And I don't know if you agree, because I know you talk to a ton of people, but there's a ton of people out there that just want change. They want things back to the way, and again, people say, oh, the way they were, like you want some racist thing. No, I just want people to respect the people. I want our laws to be followed. I want the Constitution to be the law of the land, and everyone just say, hey, you can do what you want to do. Let me do what I want to do.
Yeah,
And get
enforce the
government
laws.
out of
That's
things.
why do we have them? I mean, Jimmy and I talk about it all the time. Like, you have all these laws in the books, but you don't enforce them. Do you enforce what you think you want to enforce when you want to enforce? I mean, I got to listen to this today. I have to sit there and listen to Maura Healey and that Michelle Wu. I wanted to barf in my mouth. I mean, it's terrible. Oh, and we have the first gay governor to help cut the ribbon. Like, why do I need to know that?
Yeah.
None of us care. Why are you bringing your sexual? I don't say, hey, I'm the first heterosexual Italian in my freaking family who's ever run for. I mean, what? Why is this something we're talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, they got to in your face with it. Just, and if we say anything, we're racist or we're discriminatory.
Yeah.
I just there's wrong.
The other thing you were talking about, Justin, about like scaling things back is that like resonates with me a lot, is scaling back government, because you look at the situation that we're going to, that we were talking about a little bit earlier with the banking, and it's like look at what companies are doing across the country. It's like you see companies, CEOs making really hard decisions like, oh, we have to cut our workforce by 10, 15, 20%. Some companies aren't even going to make it. But what's happening in the government? The state of Massachusetts is increasing the budget by like $15 billion. You know, it's like it's not based in reality. It's like we had these checks that we got back last year because they overtaxed us, and I bet someone in some room is like, we need to make sure that we don't send taxpayer dollars back to people anymore. So it's like the government budget's getting jacked up. Well, you have the private sector like tightening their belts and doing everything that they can to survive, and it doesn't make any sense at all.
Look at our roads and our bridges. Look at where we are. So I'll give you, this is an interesting story. I took the train from Westboro, okay?
Yep.
I have never taken the train. The hell, I drive everywhere. So I go over there. There's an app. I got to download the app. I got to put my credit card in. I got to do this song. We live in Massachusetts. You got MIT, Harvard, BU. But I also got to pay for parking. Oh, you got to download another app to pay for parking. MBTA, same parking lot, same train, same everything. But I need another app. I'm on the train. I go, oh, shit, I got to pay for my car. I ask the conductor. I go, I got to pay for my car to sit there in Westboro? Oh, yeah. So now I got to download another app, put my credit. I'm on the train. And I'm saying to myself, we can't come up with like a piece of software, an app that just does the whole thing. I can take the bus, I can take the train, nope. Now you expect a senior citizen to travel to a hospital in Boston. They're going to go to the Westboro train station and they're going to figure this out on their own. Like, we are so behind in so many ways. It's not even funny, and they're not making it easier. More government is the worst thing that can happen in this state. More is not better. It's not even close to being better.
Yeah.
There's not one thing we can talk about. You guys are both veterans that we can talk about that the government does well. There's nothing that they do well, and it's a shame.
They ruin things.
I was thinking the whole way over here. I go, can you imagine George Washington, who was a farmer, who was a general, who was a president? I mean, Lincoln. Yeah, he was a lawyer. Okay, but just look at their lives. They understood the common man. These clowns leading this country have never worked. They never shoveled shit. They never milked the cow. They never cut the lawn. They never did anything.
Yeah. Hey, so
let's the boot camp. Oh.
I got some things for you right here too.
I'm
I don't know if
fired
you
up,
can.
man.
I don't know if you can see that. I got a little. I low key went on your Facebook and had some other pictures we had of you or whatever. So I figured we could go through some of the things that you did in your political campaign, talk about it, and I think you were with me and Jimmy, and we kind of talked about it earlier before you came on about how the Mass GOP doesn't have a really good ground game and how we have to build that ground game because a lot of new politicians or a lot of people that want to get active in this political arena, really it's reinventing the wheel for every one of them. And it makes it difficult to get going. You spend so much time trying to figure out everything instead of just going out campaigning. So I know this was the vote no on the illegal immigrants getting driver's licenses. What was your experience with that?
Well, I'm sure glad Jimmy was with me. That's what I can tell you, because he carries. You know what I mean? So it's a good thing because, I mean, to get threatened by people to look at us and to call us clowns, and this is all you can have to do on your Saturday. You know, there's a lot of people that came up there and signed those petitions. You know, and they were very happy to do it. And when people drive up and they're senior citizens and they can't even get out of their car, they got to walk in their car, and you walk over there with a clipboard and they shake your hand and they say to you, "We've got to stop this. And if you get voted in, you need to help us." And they shook your hands and look into your eyes. It's a heartbreaking experience. And, you know, I was, Jimmy had left me one day. We had left, we were done there in Clinton. And I went over to Harvard, Hudson, and a guy threatened to blow my brains out and threatened two of the servicemen that were there with us, which were like my age guys, to fight him. And then the nut from Acton came over there with his group of what's that guy's name, Jim? The guy from Acton. He's not a senator, right? He's a state legislator, nut job from Acton, Boxborough. He was there with all these anti people saying, you know.
Oh, is that Jamie Eldridge? Is that the one?
Oh, Jamie Eldridge and his crew and nut job. So, you know, it's just wrong. And listen, this lady here, right?
Yes.
Look, she was a firecracker.
Yes.
And she had guts. I don't know if she's electable or not electable, but she had guts to get up there. And she fought hard. And I always find it funny because they always want to use the race card, right? The other side wants to use the race card, you know, and then and then Baker's campaigning against all these people and the minorities, and they're women, they're black women, and they're campaigning against them. So who's the racist? You know what I'm saying? Give me a break.
I don't know. This is a great event. This is like an event at the Jim Lyons' house where we got to meet
Jimmy Lyons. Yeah. Jimmy Lyons.
I think it was great. You saw a vast majority of a mix of really good people. And I think most of them, at least the politicians I met and I was connected with, and I don't know if I was just attracted to other politicians over other ones, but I think a lot of like you and I, we just want change. We're just done with the same old. And I think probably that's why we didn't get much support from Baker.
Well, I don't think they had to know us to support us. I think what they should be doing, in my eyes, it's like being on a team. And like at the Patriots, you're on the Patriots, right? Bill Belichick's the coach. Well, someone's got to be the coach of this thing. It can't be the governor telling people, "Now we're going to shut down everybody's bank accounts and we're going to take the money and we're only going to give it to the people we want to give it to." Yeah. I mean, to not even have a phone call from anybody and not to help any of us. If you had help from the GOP, if you had help, real help, if you lose, what was it, 53-47? Would you say it was 53-47? If you even had an inkling of help, 1 month of help, like I don't even say a lot of money, 10 grand, 10,000, you had been over the top. 47, 53. And what did a lady spend? 40 grand? She spent over $40,000?
I spent $40,000. Spent $7,500. She spent almost $40,000.
And I think this point that Mike's delivering is like, it's really good to unpack for anyone that's like new to politics or new at all. So I found this very interesting, right? So like Mike and I connected literally about a year ago. This past couple of weeks is like we went to a rodeo in 2022. That was like where this all started. Mike's like, hey, I'm thinking about running for state rep, complete outsider, never been involved in politics.
I had
Myself,
no
it's like,
idea what I was doing.
so we started off as like, just complete blank slates into this whole process. And, we look at the district. Mike's in a very competitive district against against a Democrat. Like it's the person who ran in 2020 got like 45% of the vote, and they changed the districts around. So like we are thinking that, hey, we're going
to
to
be
compete
great
against in a competitive district against a Democrat, and we're going to give it our all. And then as we're getting into the campaign, we start to realize that like it's not the Democrats that are holding us back. It's like it's like Mike is trying to get his campaign going, and part of that is like reaching out to the RTCs, the Republican town committees, to get like standouts organized, to get like help, to get like mailers, like donations in. And as we go through this, we find out like none of the RTCs in his district are organized, or like less, like half of them, and none of them are like high functioning RTCs. They're not like meeting monthly. They're not like, they're not really supporting candidates. So we're like, okay, we're doing like Mike is putting his name out, like all his energy out on the line to run, and we're getting no support from anyone in his district. In his district, like the state committee is the like role that's responsible for getting that whole thing up and organized. And like me and Mike are talking to each other throughout the campaign, like trying to track down the state committee man and the state committee woman, and like we're like trying to find them. And I like stumble upon an article, and I'm like, Mike, I think this is your state committee man. He's the guy that shut down the bank accounts to the Mass GOP. So we're like, we go to these events, and like the Democrats, like she's not like his Democratic opponent isn't like campaigning, like
no,
she's
being so sweet. She's going, hi, Mike. How are you? How are things? Meanwhile,
like the reason
she's partying. She's partying like a rock star at every fundraiser's at a bar. And she's getting hammered, and I'm like, and she's getting $1,000 a whack for people to go to her. I'm going, Jimmy, are we doing something wrong? Like we had no idea.
It's like, it's like the reason that we couldn't be like as successful as we could have been. It's like it had nothing to do with what the Democrats were doing. Like they were literally like sitting and going to like beer fundraisers like every weekend. It was like a joke, but it was like the Republican Party, like the state committee was just like just completely unorganized and completely like no clue what was going on. Then we find out that there's these two factions in the state committee. It's like the one side is aligned to like Charlie Baker, and then you have like the Baker PAC, which is giving money to actual like Democrats in like close races where Republicans are running. Like, Bruce Chester, the Baker PAC, gave $30,000 to his Democrat opponent so that he wouldn't. So it's just that's how we got from like starting as complete outsiders to like realizing the reason we can't be successful is within our own party here in Massachusetts.
Well, not to cut.
Jimmy, how about Hostage? How about Jeff Hostage? When they told him,
John Hostage,
John Hostage told him not to run because they liked the Democrat. They got along with the Democrat. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
It's been an eye-opening experience this last year, but anyone that watches this and thinks about getting involved in politics, there are people that are going to change it. Like we understand that it's going to be a bottom-up approach. I had one candidate I was working with, and he pounded the pavement, knocking on doors for 11 months. 11 months, because that's what he was told to do. And he didn't even make the primary. So I was talking to him, and I'm like, I don't think knocking on doors works or was the most effective use of your time. And we were having a little discussion about this. And I go, let me ask you a question. If in that 11 months you build a couple RTCs, do you think you would have been on the ballot? Because he was doing a write-in campaign. And he realized at that moment he would have. If he would have had support from RTCs that were non-existent, if he had 2 or 3 people in a couple different towns or whatever, he would have had people to be there to help him out, to hand out the cards, to get his name out, to get people in. But he got bad advice. And I think Republicans, unfortunately, and especially in Massachusetts, have a lot of bad advice, a lot of old ideas. And trust me when I say this, anyone that watches this show, like, we have better ideas. They're going to be coming out and we're going to make it successful, because we can't afford to keep losing. We can't afford to let our school systems deteriorate, our roads and infrastructure deteriorate. We can't afford to let government keep ruining everything it touches. We have to push back. And like I said, I was an honor to meet Mike and to talk to Mike, because he's just another guy that said he had enough. Like I have enough.
It's just terrible. It's a terrible feeling when you're driving down the road and you just see all these things are just out of whack. The thing with the veterans, the thing with the police, the thing with the hospitals, and the medical thing, the thing with senior citizens, people, the government getting into their Social Security. There's too many things that are all in a row that are just bad. This whole woke movement. Like, when are people going to just, well, you have neighbors. Stop being afraid and stand up and speak your mind. What are you afraid of? Look at this voting. Look at this voting record. Just look at
I wanted to bring this up. I know you would like this.
It's just unbelievable.
This was their opponent.
Yeah.
Why would anybody
vote now? It's unbelievable.
This is a great point too, because like you show this to the average voter, and the average voter would say no, like absolutely, like do not like the opposite of how this person voted. And Mike brought up a great point when he was talking at the beginning. He was saying that, one of the things was like that helped him get in, or like that he saw getting in, was like Trump. And like you look at Trump and what he's done to things to shake up things in the government, but it's like some of the things that Trump saw, or some of the things that we saw in Mike's campaign. It's like you can have someone that wants to shake things up, but it's like if there's no support in the government, if there's no like help, you can't do it all on your own. And that's exactly what happened. Is like you had like you had these people in the government that like they want nothing to do with Trump, because they see how he's trying to shake things up. And the same thing with Massachusetts. It's like you get someone that wants to shake things up and do things differently. It's like you have the establishment people on both parties, the Republican and the Democrat, that are like they do not want newcomers coming in and shaking things up. So it's like they will work against their own party. They will fight and they will kick and they will scream to make sure that nothing changes what the establishment politics are in this state.
Yeah,
Justin, I got to ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why do you think, when you look at like the federal government, you just look, and it's the same in Massachusetts, when you look at the Mitch McConnells and you look at these people and this thing with, and it's all over, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's going after the Twitter guy, whether it's going after this one, that, I mean, you talked about manufacturing before, and I'm laughing. I was laughing at the TV the other day in the morning, and they're going, yeah, well, I think maybe we should take care of, South America and get manufacturing back. Yeah, duh. Yeah, really? You think that that's a good idea? Now you think it's a good idea? Like, you have Mexico's a mess. Like, why wouldn't we be doing this where we could drive across the border and get the goods? Instead, we're dealing with Russia and China. Who thinks any of this is a good idea? So it's just nonsense.
I have a good saying in a response to your question, and I've always said this to people. I said, in my lifetime, the only thing that's changed is everything's in high definition or 4K now. All these topics that we're forced to answer, right? New to political realm. They want to ask you about abortion. They want to ask you about homelessness, illegal immigration, all these other things. And I'm like, this stuff has been going on since I've been born, right? And I think what happens is you have a lot of politicians that just don't have the desire to fix it, because in their mind, if things are fixed, they have nothing to run on. And what they need to do is they need to create more things that keep us divided, so they have their team and you have your team. And their calculus is, if our crazy ideas garner us more support, we'll keep these crazy ideas. And it just blows my mind. And I think they don't want people like you or I to get in there to fix things, because if we fixed it, what do you run on? I mean, you could run on, hey, I fixed this, but people like, who cares? That is your job. So if they're always like, hey, listen, infrastructure. I mean, how many times we hear about infrastructure? How many times we hear about the homeless? It's the same thing all the time. and people
I
keep
just
voting.
think
These
it's
people
just,
are going to fix it. No, they
Wait,
haven't.
Justin, you mean that after we passed question 1, all this money that was going to go to the schools, you mean that politicians are still going to come to us and say, "Hey, we need more taxes to fund schools," after we just passed this ballot initiative that was supposed to
no.
solve this problem?
Hey,
Yeah.
the schools are no different because what's happening is, like in all these towns, they what do? Because it's union, right? So they just add more administrators. So I mean, it's brutal. It's they're no different than government. That's the problem because federal
Sure.
money's running into those things. If you didn't, man, I'm telling you, the day school choice gets passed, and the day they got to compete for people's money, is
Oh
the
yeah.
day that the school system will get fixed. And it's so right there in front of everybody's face, and they just don't get it. Like, dude, it's you think about it. If I could take my taxes in Northborough and I could go put my kid in a private school for the same money or half the money,
Yep.
it's a game changer.
It
And they're
is.
going to be held accountable, and they're going to have to do their work, and they're going to have to do everything they're supposed to do, and there's going to be no nonsense, and they're going to have a haircut, they're going to have a uniform, and they're going to be held accountable.
Yes.
Guess what? It's too bad because you know what? Johnny is going to be an unproductive little brat his whole life if he doesn't get the structure, and that's the real deal. I
And
mean,
and one other thing too is I'm reminded of this voters thing because I had a very similar one that I had posted. I had it on big signs on election day, and my opponent went around to all the sites saying those are lies, but they're not lies. They're her voting record.
yeah,
And one of the problems, as you said earlier, Mike, was if I had $10,000 more dollars, I probably would have won. And you're probably right because I didn't have a lot of money and I did a mailer, and my mailer had her voting record, and I had to kind of like, when do I do the mailer? Do I do it too early or too late? And I think I did it just a little too late because if I would have done it when early voting started, she would have had a lot more people that didn't vote for her. Because when that thing went in the mail to every single house in my district, and I
oh
mean
boy,
every house, Republican and Democrat, that had her voting record on it, they were pissed. And that's another problem. A lot of people elect politicians, elect representatives, thinking that they're going to act for your best interest, and all they act is for party lines.
I agree. That is the one thing that just is. It sits in my stomach. I would run. I would run with anybody. Anybody that's willing to have the guts to go out there and run, and I would be willing to debate all these issues. But I could never go there and sit there and this is what's happening on the other side. They go there and there's an agenda, and they're
Yes.
just voting based on what they're being told to vote. If you think the girl that I ran against, that the side, and she's probably a lovely human being, okay? But if you think she's got an idea of her own that's going to help our district, that is the most diverse district that you could imagine when you look at these towns, there's no way. I mean, there's no way. They go, oh, she's so nice. She went to the retirement dinner for Betty Jubert. Retirement dinner for some town? That's what she's doing with her time, going to retirement dinner? What the hell do I give a shit about going to retirement dinner? I mean, what are you doing?
Yes.
You're,
Yep.
you're making $100,000 a year. Her claim to fame is she's going to retirement dinners. Oh, isn't that terrific? How's
Yeah.
that help the
I
single
think
mom in Clinton? How does that help a veteran who's got lost his limbs and needs to get to go to go in for PT and stuff? But there's no VA around. He can't go to like a local place and do it. He's got to pay it out of pocket. How's that help him? It's
no.
like a joke. It's embarrassing.
And the problem is no one knows. And that was one of my big things when I got in. I talked to
Nobody
Jimmy.
knows. Nobody
I said, "What
knows.
are these
That's the
people's
truth.
voting records?" So I had to find their voting records, and it's a little easier now with the internet to find some of this. And on my website, I posted her voting records, and I cross-reference it because one of them's from a conservative site, and one was from a liberal site, and obviously their takes on the voting records different. Like, hey, higher taxes, the liberal liked it; higher taxes, the conservative didn't. But the vote was the vote. And I used to tell people like, hey, she voted for illegals to have driver's licenses. And they're like, well, why? And I go, because I don't think she cares. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, she was told, hey, listen, no one runs against you. And because no one runs against you, you can take this hit. And we're telling you, vote for illegals to have driver's licenses. Now, how does that benefit
Just,
her people?
just think about this. You, we're going to have illegals drive cars. They're not citizens. It's just, what the are we doing? What normal person, whether you're in high school, you could be in elementary school and ask a little kid and go, do you think, because kids know about laws, you just ask them, they would look at you like you had two horns growing out of your head. They would probably say no.
Yes.
No normal thinking human being thinks it's a good idea for people that are not citizens of our country to be legal. Just, oh my God, what is wrong?
Well,
I need therapy. This is like
you do?
therapy coming here. Swear to
Well,
God.
listen, we need more people like us to run, and that's the big thing, and they need more support. And I think as
I
more
don't even
people
have
like
to run, Justin. You know, I don't have to run.
Yes.
I would love to support people that wanted to run, that wanted, like, we had some young people that I think down the road will be good. I mean, there was a girl that was a campaign manager. I think it'll be terrific if she would run. I think the kid whose dad was an attorney, he was a good kid. I mean, he's green, but his heart's in the right place. But I think if you go back to our forefathers, their hearts are in the right place. They
Yes.
were trying to set up a country, a
Yes.
free world, a free society, and we are squandering it. We are squandering it away to the federal government, and the state governments they should be embarrassed by what they're doing because they're in bed with the federal government, and now they're giving away all our rights.
Yeah. Well, I wanna take that back, and I'll work with anybody to do that. And I'm glad you have taken the time to speak with us. I also know you'll help anyone out, and I don't know what the future holds. I have this picture up of you on election day, and man, I was hoping we were gonna win. I was sitting there. I don't know about
me
you.
too, man.
On election day, it seemed like the energy was on our side. It really did.
Yes.
I had
Jimmy was in Clinton. He's going, Mike, this is crazy. The people are like, they're coming in here left and right. I got there that night. I'm like, holy shit. And people kept coming by me. She had like 20 people across the street from me. They kept coming over me and go, hey, we hope you win. Hey, we hope you win. I'm like, oh. And then these people showed up out of nowhere to hold signs with me. It's freezing cold. And I'm like, wow, and I never experienced anything like it. So I didn't really know what to make of it, but I felt good about it. And, I just thought that we had a chance. I figured, once all the votes are in, it's going to be closer than we think it is. Little did I know I was going to get shelled in the mail-in votes.
I think that speaks to our whole experience of this whole thing, of this whole campaign, is that, we, in terms of like running a campaign, I think that like we did the absolute, like pretty much the optimal, like spent all the resources, did everything the right way. Like we didn't waste any time. We didn't waste any money. Like, we had all the energy. The people are there. It's like when you talk about these issues, you go down the line. If you were to ask every single independent voter which issues they support to check them off, they would be, on our side. But you have these other things going on. It's like you have the establishment, the political establishment that is doing everything they can to prevent outsiders from coming in. And I think that's,
it's a shame.
It is.
Like approaching this in good faith, like, we can just, campaign on the issues and get elected. Like that was the big assumption. But little did we know that there's a whole undercurrent in the political process that's working to prevent newcomers from coming in and shaking things up. So like that's what we realized was a true problem. And that ends up like going back to the state committee and really shining a spotlight on the state committee to get high performers in there so that the next person that runs after Mike can be successful. Because the issues, we're on the right side of the issues. It's just a matter of, okay, we have to work through the process to make sure that like we have the infrastructure, we have the support there so that these candidates, good candidates that are running in good faith, that want to do the right thing for their residents can be successful. Because right now, the way that the infrastructure is set up, You can be the best candidate out there, but the infrastructure is not there to help you be successful.
Jimmy,
So I think really looking at the state committee is going to be the next the next line to moving this process forward.
Justin, at one of the meetings that we went to with Jim Lyons, and it was in Worcester or Boylston. It was at the Dunkin' Donuts. And we're in there, and I'm just thinking back to how, and this lady says to me, "Mike, I'm really sorry I didn't help you more and this and that," because she finally figured out. Because when I went to I was going to run for the state Senate seat. She literally said to me, "Well, listen, I'm sorry, I can't support you. I'd rather you lose." And I was like, "What?" I was so shocked. Like, what? Lose? Yeah, because we want to get the mayor out of Worcester. I'm like, what are you like? And so then I ran for state because Jimmy did the numbers. So she says, "Look, the state rep numbers are better. We got a better shot. Let's do that." I said, "Okay." And then I called her back, and Brad Wyatt's in that district, and we just nothing happened. Not the only Clinton had a little something, very very little.
Yep.
And then Sterling had the most. Berlin, forget it. Northborough, forget it. It just was nothing. It was in Boylston, really nothing.
Yeah, and Brad is, he's like a person that can help. He was working on like another campaign, but like
not Brad. Not Brad's problem.
It's the state committee is the one that like really should have had this thing up and running.
Yeah.
And well, Mike was talking about that.
Brad was really helpful, actually. Brad helped quite a bit.
Oh, more than the state committee, more than the people whose job it actually was to do this.
He gave me so many great ideas. He was awesome, and he was stretched. But it just to have them look at you. This is the election's over. It's like, I'm really sorry I never returned your call. I'm really sorry. I'm like, and then Jimmy's pointing at him. Like the guy sitting next to me, Justin.
Oh.
The guy is sitting next to me.
That's great.
I thought I look at my phone and I look at the picture on my phone and he sent me, and I look at him and I go, "You gotta be." Dude, I wish there was no cameras around. I wanted to get up and jump on him. Yeah. I was so
Mike's state committee person that we're looking for this entire campaign in this Mass GOP information session that we show up into Worcester. So it was so funny because the entire room was like pretty much packed. Like there was one empty seat in the whole room, and Mike came in like 5 minutes, after the event started or something like that. So he picks the one seat that's open in this event.
Tell me, go sit there. I'm like, okay.
The state committee person and he didn't even know at the time because he's never met the guy. And I'm like Mike,
Nice
that's the state committee guy. And then like Jim is like giving his presentation. He's like talking about the treasurer who shut down the bank accounts. And Mike's like, "This is the guy. This is my state committee guy." He's like, "You gotta be kidding me. First time I ever met the guy is tonight."
Like the guy's going like this.
Yeah.
Out of the collar.
Half of them had their attorneys there. The whole thing is just a mess.
Just squirrely. They're just. It's funny. When you look at guys that were in uniform, that wore the uniform, and there's a guy. This guy was in. It's hard to believe that he was ever in the military.
Really?
Because he's just. Oh, he was a military guy, right, Jimmy?
Yep.
He's a military guy.
Yeah. He sent. Forget this. So when him and Jim Lyons were having their I don't know, when he didn't like the fact that they didn't that they seated a legitimate state committee member. So when they were having a falling out, he sends a picture of himself with an AK-47 to Jim Lyons. Like, can you believe that? Like, this is like, who needs enemies when you have a team like this in the match?
Well,
they're just maturity. It's just they're not. They love power, but they don't want to do anything with it. I don't know what they have power over what they don't have anybody. It's in office. They're what did you call it, Jimmy?
There's a song by Metallica. It's called King Nothing.
Yes.
And it's like
there you go.
It's like, where's your crown, King Nothing? It's like you're the king of a house of cards. It's like you're just like, there's no point of even being in there. It's like they run to get these positions, but then they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
It's like They just
Well,
kind of like look at their titles and like pat themselves on the back.
it's
I
kind
know
it's
I
kind of a
don't
good.
know, Justin. I know
What?
I don't know. I know that I don't know a lot. I don't know a lot about a lot of this stuff, but
Yep.
I know in my heart, that I think the elderly should be taken care of. I think affordable housing is important. I think good school systems are a good idea. I think that we should be a law and order society.
Yep.
I believe in the police. I believe in having structure. I believe in all this stuff. Okay, but come on. We talk about everything else, but all the things that are important in this country, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think again that goes to the point. A lot of people agree with what we're saying, and they can't, because if everyone agrees, then you look for a candidate that's not them. So what they have to do is they have to be divisive. They have to find the differences. They have to separate everybody, because by doing that, like I said, they get their teams and they did the research, and these are the type of people that will vote for us. And if everyone just got together and said, hey, listen, can't we just have a government do what it's supposed to do, like not be intrusive on our lives, take care of the roads and our safety and our well-being, then what's their need, and how can they get in other people's pockets to get money? So, but hey, one of the things I like to do, I don't know if you noticed, we've only done the show a couple weeks, Mike, is I like to kind of close out the show with either a good story about someone doing something good or something kind of funny. So this week I was looking for something and I found this, and I think you'll get a kick out of it. I showed Jimmy it a little bit earlier, but we can actually talk about it because there's some metaphors that can be made. So
Oh boy, what happened? Oh Jesus!
can you see
What?
this? Hold on.
No, where? I can't see it. How?
Oh, you can't see the crab with the knife?
No.
We got to do something.
Where is it?
There's a guy trying to get a crab, and somehow it got a knife, and he's trying to get it away from him, and the crab's swinging it at him.
You'll see it in the presentation in the published version. I think it's on.
Yeah, you'll definitely see it in the published version. But like I said, to me, it was kind of like a metaphor, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes you have to fight with what you have or what's around you, right? And
You're
that's,
right.
I think, as
Yep.
politicians, that's what you and I and Jimmy did, right? When we were running, we were like, what do we have? What are the resources? What can we do? And how do we fight?
And I think, like, Justin, your district, like, you in that campaign, so you went against a 22-year incumbent. This lady had not been run against since like 2003.
22 years.
Yeah.
She's as old as dirt. She's been in 22 years. What? I just
She's
wanna
nice.
say, what
Hold on.
have you done?
You got
22
outspent
years.
like 11-1. Like that campaign spent 55 grand to your $5,000 to like roughly like 5,000, and you ran a 2-month like write-in campaign, and you got 47% of the vote. Like, to me, that is like the pure definition of like these are the limited resources we had, and we fought with them. And
Yes.
that result is incredible for a state rep race. That state rep race is
Unbelievable.
like, you typically need like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to run a competitive state rep race, and like the fact that you were able to get that amount like in such a short period of time, it just goes to show you how much if we
Let's
do
not
fight.
scare potential people off. It would be nice to have $40,000 or $50,000, but you can do it with short money.
Yeah, but that's
Well,
the reality is we know
yeah,
now.
that's the point of this.
Yeah.
Is like, yeah, you can produce some really great results, and I mean, the next cycle when you have a full experience of doing this, it's like it's going to be a much different result. So
Yeah, I hope so. Well, Mike,
Do
it
you
was a
think-
pleasure.
do you
We're
think-
definitely
can I
going to
ask you
have
a
you on
question?
again.
Can I ask you a question? Do
Sure.
you think, as we get the state committees organized, right, we can get organized across the state,
Yes.
and if we could get these, there's plenty of conservative people that own businesses, but I think they know what we didn't know. Because remember, I was reaching out to like local businesses. Mike, like Brad said, hey, Mike, you should call this guy, you should call that guy. And I was making calls, but I was hitting dead ends. And then finally, I did get some money near the end, at the last minute. Remember, Gene, I got on a hot streak. But I think they knew we were just, it's not right. Like, I think they understand that it's messed up. So they're like, well, why am I going to throw good money after bad? You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like, and I think if we can show them in the next 24 months that we can get our act together, we can then maybe in groups start to reach out to these people, have a luncheon,
Yes.
Invite, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, be more professional about it and meet them at a dinner or a golf or whatever it is, whatever we got to do. And then say, hey, look, this is how things have changed and this is why we need your support. Then maybe we can really fundraise enough money for everyone that's campaigning. You know, the bigger picture I mean to say, and hopefully just be able to, a guy that's going to run in a district here that we never had anybody run, and we could kind of give them a roadmap to how to do this, because we kind of
Yes.
have a pretty good idea. We know you need signs, you know you need standouts, you know you need to publicly speak. This knocking on door, I understand what Fatman did, but Jimmy, you experienced it with me. I mean, if I had anything to do over, I'd suck it up and I would knock on more doors. But if I could also publicly speak more often,
Yeah.
and be in front of other larger groups more often, I think would be really great. Like if you could go speak at I hate to say PTO, but something like that. You know what I mean? Where you're getting moms and dads and little leagues, whatever. And it doesn't have to be hardcore speech. It's just got to be like, this is your family's life. Like this is, do you want a better tomorrow for your, now it's me, my grandkids, not my kids, my grandkids, okay? But your kids, Jimmy's kids, you know what I'm saying? Like to me, if you're a young parent and your kids are in school and you and your husband are working and you're working and you're paying $10,000, $12,000 in taxes and you're both working, you don't have time to do anything with your kids, like, don't you want a better life for your family? I mean, and they're just pissing the money away. That's the thing that's killing me. And it's not like the money's being spent on great stuff. They're not spending the money. It's just being pissed away. So we got to find more people that are just got to get these state committees going, and then get these town committees going, and get more conservative people to start participating in local town elections. And
Yes.
we got to move this thing forward,
You know,
because that's the answer.
It doesn't take much either. It's like once we start breaking through the door, you know, once we get one person elected that's like a grassroots person that's going to be a loud voice, like is going to be a leader out there. Like imagine in 2024 if we flipped, like, I mean, one would be, you know, having even just one person that's really there and can like shine a spotlight on us, all this stuff would be great. But imagine if we get like 4 or 5 people flipping seats, and then all of a sudden it's like the whole floodgates come down.
I thought at least you'd add 10 rep seats. I thought at least a couple, like one senator seat, something.
Yeah.
It's just like,
well,
wow,
look at the state committee. What happened? Like, what were they doing? You know, these are the roles that are supposed to energize the like, they're like the blood of the Mass GOP. They were boycotting their jobs for an entire year. Like that's how bad it is. Like, yeah, I'm sure if that didn't happen, we would have had some seats flip. But it's like, you know, you can't be successful when the people who are supposed to organize the party are boycotting their jobs. So I think that's really
Master Sergeant. I'm going to boycott tomorrow morning's workout.
No way.
It just doesn't happen.
No.
Can you imagine this behavior? It's unbelievable.
Well, listen. So,
Thanks,
Mike,
man.
we're definitely gonna have you on in the multiple times in the future. We love having you on. We love, you know, hearing your fire and your passion. I think a lot more people out there need to hear that.
Be proud
I
of
think a
your
lot of other
country.
people
Be
out there.
proud of your country and your
Yes.
community. We should be proud of where we live, and be proud of and have neighbors, and be thoughtful of other people, and
Yes.
you know, go out and be good people. Like, just come on, man.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Well, we'll have you back.
Thanks. Appreciate it. This is
Thank
great.
you again. Like I said, we really appreciate you taking the time, Jimmy, as always. When hopefully we see you next week, obviously on Let's Talk with Justin Thurber. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go, guys. Let's go. Good